like I say, right now I think pretty much anything's possible. But yeah, I think that's fairly likely, you know, because like I'm saying, an average person can't build a TV set. Somebody had to figure it out. Well, maybe the way they figured it out is somebody who knew how to do it showed them how to do it or something, you know. Might have been something that was learned from somebody who's already been doing it for thousands of years. And that makes sense to me. Like with time machines, I figure at first it's the all scientists and stuff. But after they've been around for a few hundred years or thousand years, then you got the teenagers out joyriding in the time machine.
In the studio, I have one of the artists of the band Half Japanese, and they may be one of the most influential bands of all time. David Fair and his brother Jad were the subjects of the documentary Half Japanese, the band that would be king. Now David is known as a prolific painter and writer. Tonight, David Fair. That and more coming right up on My Alien Life. My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, 0, and liftoff.
Around 1975, David Fair and his brother Jad started a band in Uniontown, Maryland, and since then, they released nearly 30 albums. All of them include amazing artwork. The band has been associated with the Velvet Underground, Moe Tucker, who is their former drummer, also the Tinklers, Daniel Johnston, Sonic Youth and Nirvana. It's my great pleasure to have with me one of my favorite musicians and such a prolific artist and writer as Mr. David Fair. Thank you for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for asking me. I have never done a podcast before, but
you're kidding. I was embarrassed to even ask you. I thought, this guy's probably already got a podcast, and because obviously you're a writer.
Yeah, my wife's interested in doing a podcast, and I bet one of these days she will. She tried, at one point recording one, we went over to a friend's house who has a lot of good stories, and they sat and we recorded it, and they talked for 2 or 3 hours, and there were a lot of good stories there, but then nobody followed up and edited into something that could be listened to. But I bet she'll get back into that one of these days, and she'll be pretty good at it. And I will maybe end up talking on that one. And I have been asked to talk on another one, but it just hasn't happened yet. It's going to be coming pretty soon, where I talk about another band that I was in called Cuckoo Rockin' Town, and the album that we made. Really want to talk about that on a different podcast.
So, podcasts have been around a while, and you had guys like, they were calling a podcast back in the day, like Larry King and
right.
Art Bell, and, one of the things that I heard just recently that I think is an underestimate, but they're saying that there's currently about 860,000 active podcasts. Now, to me, I'm thinking that's too many. But then again, look at all the artists, look at all the musicians and that are all producing. And like you said, we talked about the fact that it's so easy to make music and it's so easy to make movies because everybody has basically a recording device in their pocket all the time.
Exactly. And so from that angle, it's surprising that really pretty much everybody isn't doing it. I have on my Facebook page, there's a Man Ray painting of some lips in the sky. I don't remember the name of the painting. I'm sure it's a famous one and I should know it, but I have that for my background. I don't know the official terms of Facebook stuff, but at one point when I stuck that on there, I wrote, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised that I use it for a background, but I'm surprised that everybody else doesn't use it because it's the right shape to be the background. You know what I mean? It's like just a little bit tall and way wider, which is the shape of backgrounds on Facebook. So, something seemed to me, I guess, like they'd be so obviously fit for a certain purpose. And that's what I'm trying to say here, that certainly everybody can put whatever they want on Facebook, and I'm not suggesting everyone in the world should put this picture on, but I'm just surprised I've never seen anyone else use it when, in my mind, if you were rounding it off, rather than nobody using it, I would round it off to everybody uses it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things that, when I think about you and art and music, one of the things that really amazes me, and you see this illustrated if you go to Seattle to the Experience Music Project, and basically they have a big map that maps music, and there's Nirvana in there's Pearl Jam, there's whatever, and how these guys related to each other. In the movie that you were in, Half Japanese, there were so many relationships there and connections in music and art that you had, in just this, short documentary. What's that like, those connections in music and like with you and your brother with Daniel Johnston and even like Penn Jillette and it goes on and on and on. What are those relationships like, and do they last forever, or is it constantly evolving and creating new ones?
Yeah, it's nice to always have new friends, but on the other hand, the way I look at a friend is that friendship never ends. Sometimes it does, you kind of get locked out or something, but from my point of view, I'm not ending it. But the people you mentioned are all still good friends, and I don't get to see them very often, but they're in my thoughts, and I get emails once in a while, and whatever. But with those all happened in weird ways. Like Penn was roommate with MC Caustic, who used to be one of the editors of the Velvet Underground Appreciation.
I had no idea that.
Yeah.
Of that relationship. So, that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's how I think that's how Penn might have first heard our music. And he wrote us a few times when he was still in something called I don't remember. It was three guys. It was him and Teller, and it was something asparagus appreciation, something, I don't know what it was called, but there were three of them. It was even before kind of Penn and Teller. And so we had known him. Eventually, at one point, he was in charge of, he was putting up money for the record label that MC Caustic was running in Florida. And so we sort of met them that way. Maureen Tucker, I guess we had just been writing to her, and she was writing back. She was sweet as can be. Just over the years, I guess people are drawn to us somehow, and we're drawn to other people that are making art and music because it seems like it's a pretty interesting way to spend your life, and that's where a lot of interesting people tend to be.
But back then, yeah. You said you were writing to Moe Tucker. I mean, that's you're using the U.S. mail, and it's not like you're establishing these relationships like you and I did. I texted you and said, "Hey, could you be on the show?" And things now can happen in moments, whereas, back then it took a little more time to develop. But I think it seems more solid.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And that might well be the case, that it's, so a lot of what we have nowadays is built on a solid foundation. And so I don't even have to try to think about it, really. A lot of people seem to know me from being in a band. Sometimes other ways. It's funny. There's one quick story here. Is one time I was my wife and I were walking into the mall here in town where we live, and there were some young kids coming in while we were going out. We were walking in. They were coming out. That's how it was. But they're all dressed in black, and they got their hair forked and everything. And the one guy says, "Aren't you David Fair?" And I said, "Oh yeah." And I figured, oh, he must know the band, and he's seen us play or something, And instead, he said, "You taught me how to tie my shoes." And I had no memory of that. It's like I was a bookmobile librarian,
right,
for a long time, and we would take the bookmobile to preschools and daycare centers and stuff, and I'd do story times, and so I knew a lot of these kids, and now here it is then, 16 years later or something, and the guy remembers me from that. I'm famous for, and 3 different people have told me I taught them to tie their shoes, and I don't remember ever teaching anybody how to tie their shoes. So, I guess I'm affecting people in ways I don't even know.
I know from being a dad, I was never really good at tying shoes or teaching. I could tie my shoes, but I wasn't very good at teaching. It really takes something special to do that. Talking, I didn't really want to go into Penn Jillette at all, but one of the things I do want to mention about him was the fact that, he was involved in different things, and he was an artist, and he's a magician, and he's into music. Like yourself, who you've been a musician and you're an artist. You've done movies and you're currently doing a movie. Do you consider yourself an artist in the truest and purest sense of what that means?
Yeah, I think, I saw recently a little clip from some kind of promo or something, and Terry Adams from NRBQ, I think is the one who said, these guys are artists and they probably can't help it, there's no choice. And to me, that seems about right. Like, I don't know, I've never, that I remember, ever been bored. I've always got projects going on in my head and stuff. And I think it's hard for me to imagine a different kind of lifestyle where people do get bored and they don't have something going on all the time. So it's all art, really, I think, whether it's music. I mean, even Half Japanese, I think, started as an art concept as much as anything, really. And it was just the idea that it would be good to have alternatives in the music world. I mean, after that, there was a thing called alternative music. But even that sounds, if you boil it down and round it off, still sounds like regular music, where ours is a little bit different. And one of the differences is we were just doing it our way, and we didn't attempt to sound screwy. And that's, in my mind, a big difference, because one time we played a show with another band who covered one of our songs. But now that was a band who really knew how to play, but trying to play screwy. And we were more like screwy people trying to play good, So it's coming from a different angle. We didn't set out to try and be, goofy or anything. We just wanted to have an alternative and have some music that sounded this way. And it kind of caught on, which in a way surprised me at the time, but I'm glad that it did sort of catch on. We've always pretty much had real good reviews and stuff. Maybe most people like us if they really give us a chance, and some people just dismiss us because we don't sound like something they're used to, and that's okay too. Everybody's life ought to be, you live it however you want. That's how I think that people can get me or not get me, and it doesn't bother me. It's just how they're, what they're doing with their life. I can't imagine spending a life where I'm not working on some project all the time. I got no choice. That's what I do.
I think it's important to note too, though, that I think this is really important, that sound, that was your sound. I mean, that's what you guys sounded like. And it was good, and it fit certain genres of the time. But then again, I mean, it also meant that you were the inventor. I mean, you were making that sound in that moment. Yeah. That's hugely important.
I do feel like that. We were playing it our way, and I feel like, I know 3 guitar chords. I've been in a band for 45 years or something. I know 3 chords, and I don't bother with them. I know 3 piano chords, but they're really no use to me, because then I'm limiting myself. And if I just ignore the chords and just play it, whatever, I kind of understand how to make a guitar sound a certain way, where you get high notes and where you get low notes and stuff. And I don't worry about harmonics and stuff. That I don't really understand what it means to be in this key or that key or something. I don't even worry about that. And I'm not saying other people should do it like me, or other people or I should or shouldn't, or what. Just the way it is. That's how I do it. And it seems to me that the world is big enough to have more than one kind of music. I mean, I'm still baffled at why there are only so many notes in a scale or something. I mean, I guess there are different types of scales. I never really studied this, but to me, maybe drums make more sense than guitars, because there aren't notes, or maybe they are and I'm not aware of it. Because people do tune their drum sets, I guess. I just tune it by, is it floppy or is it tight, and that's how I used to tune strings too. But nowadays they got tuners, all over the place. So, and I guess it's important. Well, I don't know if it's important, but if you're playing with other people, maybe have guitars starting out tuned or something. I don't know if that's an advantage. It might be. I don't know. There
are a lot of artists out there, like the Goo Goo Dolls, who had their own alternate tunings that really nobody even uses, right? Other than them, and it's fantastic, so I think that it doesn't even have to do with preference. I sit, over the years I've sat there and learned hundreds of chords, and I use 3 chords. So, I didn't need that, but I honestly believe that I wasted a lot of time with that.
Well,
when I should have just been playing. Yeah.
Not even whether it's wasted or not, but the idea that sometimes people who practice too much, I mean, I see good musicians on TV, maybe like it's a piano player and she's playing something really serious, and her face is really serious. Like a lot of times these guys in orchestras and stuff, they look like it's not even any fun. And, why would you be doing music that way? It is baffling to me. But again, my life works my way and someone else works another way. Maybe they love hours and hours of practice and playing music without a smile on your face. I don't know.
I think there's a lifetime philosophy mixed in there, and you can translate it any way. But the most important thing is enjoyment. And I want to ask you this about that. There are people who make a lot of money in music, and there's people that make no music, and there's people who make a lot of money who enjoy it so much, and there's people that hate it. So What about where does sacrifice come in? Does being an artist equate with sacrifice? Does sacrifice add to being an artist?
Not my rule book, but it could. Yeah, it could in somebody's. Like right now, I paint pretty much every day, and I don't think there's any sacrifice involved in that. I mean, I paint. I love painting and I paint. So I guess you can find sacrifices. Like maybe I'm sacrificing a social life because I don't go meet somewhere else for lunch and I stay home and paint instead. Except here I'm going to level with you. I do go out and meet people for lunch, and I don't paint all day long. So I can't think of really a sacrifice applies to that. But lately I think a lot of times I think as I get older I don't really know anything, and people there are people who think they know things, and there are people who I'm sure do know things, and I know some things, but I guess there's a lot I don't know, except how it applies to me, maybe in terms of art and sacrifice or something. Now that I think back, like maybe when we were first buying equipment and stuff, we had to not buy other things so that we could buy amps and guitars and stuff. And I used to smash up my guitars in shows a lot. And I remember reading from The Who one time, they said, well, once it didn't even make sense once they could afford to smash their guitars.
Yeah.
And I get that, and I never was at that point. I always couldn't afford to, but I would anyway because it seemed to me like it was maybe a way to get some excitement in the show or something. And and that's back. I mean, let me talk about that just a second, because that was probably my biggest influence music-wise, was reading something that Patti Smith wrote in Andy Warhol's magazine, and this was early on. I'm pretty sure Horse hadn't even come out yet. She was just starting a rock and roll career or something. But she said, if someone comes to see me play, I'm taking away an hour of their life, so I got to make sure that hour is a mother.
Right.
And when you think about that, how could it be any truer? That's exactly. To me, that was exactly the bottom line of being a performer. It's such a big responsibility. If you're using up somebody else's life, put on a good show. That's what that says to me. And I think we pretty much tried to do that. I tried to speak for the whole band sometimes. And band members have changed over the years. Maybe everyone didn't do it the same way I did, but to me, when I was playing rock and roll, I thought, well, if you're not smiling, you're not doing it right, And if you're sitting down, it doesn't seem right. Now that I'm so old, I was thinking, well, maybe I should be a bluesman now or something, because I'm comfortable sitting down. I can still get up and jump around, but can I jump as high as I used to? I hadn't really even thought of this, but see, here I'm asking the questions and answering them. See, this just proves that I've never done it live before.
It makes my job so much easier.
Yeah. I bet I could still jump as high. I know my muscles can't, but on the other hand, like during a show, maybe you got some adrenaline running through or something, and so maybe during a show, I probably could. Because that's part of the thing. I feel like anymore. I'm going to talk serious now for like a couple minutes here.
Sure.
So sit back and relax. I feel like I used to think. people would say, oh, I can't do this. And, and I think, well, no, anything's possible. You've heard that. It's like a phrase or something. And then I heard one time, I'm pretty sure it was Ken said this in an interview. Oh, anything's possible? Stick the moon in your nose, So, okay, then I started thinking, I guess he's right. Maybe everything's not possible. Now I'm back to thinking, yeah, everything is possible. Even something as outrageous as that, put the moon inside your nose. I feel like maybe we just haven't figured out the way to grab the moon. Or maybe, because there's two different ways you could do that. Either you expand your nose somehow, and we don't have the technology yet, or you have to grab the moon a certain way and it squeezes down or something, which seems very unlikely. But how do we know it can't happen? Now I'm going to get off that for a little bit, but still stay on it. When I was in high school, I remember a friend of mine said, well, how do you know what's reality? Maybe when you're dreaming it's real, or maybe we're not, maybe we're, robots or something, Now, when I first heard that, it was just laughable to me. I think that's the stupidest thing I ever heard of, I thought, at the time. But now I think, and it's basically, what led me to this is the idea of how advanced video games got, just in my lifetime. I don't play them at all. And I mean that, it's not because I have anything against them, I just don't do it. It would use up too much of my time. But just in my short lifetime, a few years ago, I don't know, maybe 30 or something, a video game was Pong. It was like a light that bounced back and forth and just went bing, bing, bing. And nowadays, they got things that look so realistic that, you almost think you're watching a movie, when you see characters in the video game. So this happened over 30 years, we'll say. Now to get to like a UFO kind of angle on this, suppose there's a civilization from another planet that's so far advanced. I mean, here's how far it came in 30 years. Suppose they got 100 years on it, or suppose they got 2,000 or 1 million years ago, or something that they could, things could be so advanced that, yeah, it is possible. We could be just programmed. We could be a video game program, but it's so far advanced and so realistic that although we're just a game, we don't realize it, which on one level just sounds, too stupid to say out loud. But then on the other hand, with the idea that, I guess anything's possible, and a timeline of how advanced some civilizations might be. So it's not possible for us today to achieve some of these things. You can't put the moon in your nose today, but to say that's impossible seems a little bit like you think you have all the answers or something. There might be a civilization that started working on that issue a million years ago, and it's just commonplace to put moons inside your nose, I guess that sounds stupid.
I gotcha.
But yeah, okay. So there's that.
Stick with me, David, because we're at a break, and for 1 minute, and David Fair is here, and we're talking about music and UFOs. I'm Cam Brower, and I want you to take a minute and talk to you about My Alien Life Patron page. What is it? Well, think of it as an online tip jar. My Alien Life Patron page is a website that gives everyone in the world an opportunity to become a patron and support artists they believe in. The great thing about supporting My Life, Alien Life, is you get to decide how much you feel comfortable contributing to each podcast. My goal is to keep doing at least 2 podcasts a week, and it's okay if you want to put a cap on how much you'd like to support every month so you don't go over your budget. As you know, some weeks I get a burst of energy and I want to produce a lot of content. And if you just want to listen without becoming a patron, that's awesome. You still get to hear My Alien Life podcast for free. It's expensive to make a podcast. There's electronic gear, web domain fees, web hosting fees, t-shirts, postage stamps, tinfoil hats, alien assault spray, and more. No matter what you decide, please always listen to the podcast. That's what I really want. And we're a team, and your support is what keeps people like us going. Thank you for being amazing, and keep listening to My Alien Life, the podcast. So I'm back with David Fair, and things are just getting interesting. David, I wanted to know what was your reaction when all of a sudden you had a DVD out there with your brother and your picture on the front?
Well, when we first were asked to make this movie called The Band That Would Be King, Half Japanese, The Band That Would Be King, we got a letter from the director, Jeff Fierzig, and it was a letter. Yeah, I'm sorry. And he just said, would we be interested in him making a movie? And at that point, we didn't know who he was. We just figured it's some college kid who has his parents' video recorder, and he'd like to film us for 20 minutes or something. Well, it turned out he was in the business making commercials and stuff, and he was the real deal, a real producer, director, and really wanted to make a real movie with many $1,000 budget. And so it was fun to make and exciting. It was a time in my life when I was had just been married and was trying to put time into that, and I wasn't that involved in the movie, but I was in it some, and I certainly supported the idea of it being made. But again, at first when it was being made, we really didn't realize what we were into here. So then when it turned out to be a real movie and people really saw it, and sometimes you can see it on TV nowadays, it's pretty cool. And then my brother and I were both in the Daniel Johnston movie that Jeff Fierzig won Best Director for that at Sundance. And, I've been in a couple other little things now. There's a movie called Everybody Loves the Tinklers, which has my favorite band, the Tinklers. It's about them, and I talk in that for a while. And then there are 2 or 3 different punk movies that we're in that I can't even tell you the names of them. But it's funny, because we keep making projects and have done some over the years, and sometimes people will get a hold of us and say, well, what about this song? But it's from 35 years ago, and I don't remember what it was about necessarily, or that we even had a song with that title or something. A lot of them are very memorable, but sometimes people who are, I guess, fans know more about my business than I do. Certain things, which is kind of cool, but a little bit weird too. I don't know. I guess there are people. I'm on the other end. There are probably people that I remember things that I've read about them or seen or know firsthand, and it's completely. Oh, in fact, here's one. Here's an example of that that's just out of their memory. Cuckoo Rockin' Time was another band that I had after Half Japanese. I was trying to quit Half Japanese, and I wanted to do something after it, and so I decided to have a band called Cuckoo Rockin' Time, and the idea was to just record one album and then be done, never play out. But we ended up playing out, and it was a whole lot of fun, and we played out a number of times, and it's a band I really enjoy. Now, when we first recorded the Cuckoo Rockin' Time album, we decided to make a video where we were lip syncing. We were like, how American Bandstand just has people fake playing, and so we thought we would make a video of us fake playing the whole album. And so we were in my basement at the time, and you couldn't even get far enough back to have the camera. So the camera was outside the window in my front yard, looking in at us, and we were playing. We had a set that we made that had a couple go-go cages so that we could have people dancing on the side, and we were all dressed up in our pajamas and playing along with the music. And the last song gets really wild, and at one point, the drummer at the time, Ricky, grabbed a hold of some part of the go-go cage, and it pulled a 2x4 down from the ceiling, and the nail that was holding it up, or one of the nails, impaled Rick in the arm. And so he was basically, he kept dancing around, but he had a 2x4 nailed to his arm doing that. So now fast forward, like a year ago, I mean, this was 20 years ago or something. A year ago, I was saying to Charles Brohan, who's from the Tinklers, who also plays in Cuckoo Rockin' Time, and I was saying, remember that time, that board got nailed to Rick's arm, and he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, we when we were making that video, we were all in our pajamas, and he said he had no memory of it. See, it went out of his memory, which is just weird to me. But I mean, I'm sure there are holes in my memory. Other people,
absolutely,
know things about me that I don't know. But I don't know how you'd forget, seeing a guy dancing around with a 2x4, like a
nailed
to his arm. Yeah, it was nuts. Luckily, one of the women that was dancing in the go-go cage was a registered nurse, so she, hooked him up to some first aid as soon as we cut the camera, and that was the last song. So it wasn't like he had to dance around for 40 minutes nailed to a board.
I'm sure nobody's ever said it's always good to have a nurse in a go-go cage, but
I know, but I'll tell you firsthand. That's the first thing I'd check now in the interview.
Regarding the movie, the band would be King. Lee Ronaldo from Sonic Youth said something like, when that first record, and that's of course half Japanese, came out, it was like an alien object from another planet. What were these guys thinking? And
yeah.
Did you? I mean, what did you think about that first record?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the very first little single that we did, it was called "Calling All Girls."
Yep.
It had 7 songs on it, and I remember at the time it was just me and Jad in the band at that time, and we were, we just made what sounded good to us. And the beauty of just that one guy plays guitar and one guy plays drums, then the guitar doesn't need to be in tune with anybody else, because there's only one guitar. So it works. It's pretty easy to have a band with 2 guys in it like that. And then we just made this thing, and it sounded like to us, this is what we're making, and this sounds good. Some of the songs on there we might have recorded 50 or 75 times. Some of them, I know at least a couple of them were just played the one time that it was recorded. It has never been played since. It was never played before. So there's a variety there, but once it was done, it was whatever it was. And I think it sounded okay to us. I do remember Jad saying one time, seeing a video of us from really way back in the early days, and we were playing someplace in D.C., and someone had shot video, and now here we are watching it, 25 years later or something. And I remember Jad saying to me, that's so weird. We really kind of sound screwy. I thought at the time we really sounded, good, like a regular band, But, so I mean, that's the difference. I mean, we were just doing something that sounded good to us. And I guess if we lined it up side by side with, Bruce Springsteen or Eric Clapton or somebody, you could always pick out who's who. We didn't sound like someone else. But I always figured, like, am I a guitar player? Well, yeah, I play a guitar. Then, but can I play Springsteen songs? No, not as good as Springsteen, but can he play as good as me doing my kind of guitar playing? No, I'm the best at that. And I'm not saying that from a bragging point of view. I'm saying it from a point of view of, for me, what I was trying to do, exactly what I was trying to do, I think it was world beating. I don't think anyone else could do what I was doing better than what I was doing it. Now, there might be someone else who does something similar, who's got more talent than I am or something. So I don't know if I were in on America's Got Talent or something, if the judges would pick me as being a good guitar player or even a guitar player. But
a guitar player, I like that.
Yeah, but that's not the point. I'm not playing their music. I'm playing my music, and if they don't get it, that's something about them, not something about me. So that's kind of the way I always felt. Like that, if a critic didn't like what I was doing, that's on him. That's him having a shortcoming. I'm not saying he has to listen to my, like if a critic doesn't like it, then take it off the turntable and put on something else. It's that easy. It's an easy world if you want it to be an easy world. So, we're never telling anyone they have to listen to this, but if you want to, it's a different sound from other things that you might be used to, and if you want some alternative and you like. And we came in at a time when it seemed like some of the other sort of the excitement had drained from rock and roll for a little time. It seemed like, to me, it was sort of like on a 9-year cycle where things would get exciting. And we grew up, seriously, in Michigan with the MC5 and the Stooges and stuff. And the very first show, the first regular, the show that wasn't just local kids at the junior high or something, the first show I saw was the MC5. And so the only direction you can go from there is travel around and see the MC5 again the next night, or start your own band, because everything else is like downhill from there. Yeah. So we kind of had no choice. The rest of the world was kind of falling asleep. There was Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and I got nothing against any of these people that I'm naming. That some people might. They might be lovely, wonderful people. I haven't met them. They might, I'm sure they're lovely. I got no reason to think otherwise. But the music to me, if you compared Crosby, Stills, and Nash with the MC5, one of them's full of excitement and one of them's full of harmony, I guess. And since I don't fool with harmony, I was looking for the other one. Yeah.
That's a good quote.
Yeah.
I want to segue sort of into your book, but first I want to kind of blow your mind. Well, maybe I want to see if you remember this, because I had a few months ago, I had a guest on the show, and I interviewed him. His name's Vermin Supreme, and he's a gentleman who's been running for president and for a long time, and he wears a boot on his head, and his platform, he wants to put a pony in everybody's home around the United States. But he had mentioned to me that I had asked him what he had done in the past and things like that, and he said that he had been a lot of things. One of them was a show promoter back in the day in Baltimore. And so I said, "Oh, really? What was the biggest band you ever promoted?" And he said he couldn't remember many, but there are these two brothers named Chad and David Fair.
Right.
And I was just like the whole relationship in music, and that just blew my mind because,
Yeah, I see him in the news a lot. I really don't remember firsthand dealing with him that much. I do, look familiar, and he is my friend on Facebook, but I don't, I never hung out at his house or anything like that. but yeah, he's got a different, interesting angle on things.
But he had said he had promoted. He couldn't remember what venue was there in Baltimore, but yeah, you guys had played in Baltimore a lot.
Yeah. There's I feel like he might have had something to do with the show that we played. Oh, I can't remember the other band's name. We were playing a show in Baltimore, and I feel like he was connected with us. But at one point, I threw my Telecaster up in the air, and accidentally, Jad moved towards me at the same time, and so when it came down, it hit him on the head, and he had a concussion and everything, which is unfortunate, but stuff happens. And I don't recommend that, throwing things at. I mean, I didn't throw it at him; I just threw it in the air. Anyway, he's okay. That was a long time ago. But I do remember the other band we were playing with at this show had a young lady singing, and at one point she just like fainted. I don't know if she was on some mind-altering drugs or something, but she was there standing up straight, and then all of a sudden just hit the floor, and it was a weird sight. I don't know that, but that's one of the shows that sticks out in my mind for that reason. Those two reasons. Punk and Jad in the head, and the other singer
nice.
Going down hard.
Memories.
But yeah, it's hard to remember what happened at certain shows. We had another one early on. Jad, to highlight his guitar skills, taped both of his hands behind his back, and we felt like we still were beating other bands, with Jad. Tied up, no hands to play the guitar, and we can still play it.
It's gimmicky, man. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I know. He might have had something to do with that show too. I don't know. I just saw though on the news either this morning or yesterday that Vernon Supreme was stopped out in front of one of the candidates. Now I can't remember. Blocked the car when he was leaving a debate or something, and demanded that he get out and debate him right there on the spot.
Yeah,
I guess he's still in the politics.
He's in the politics. So you are a musician and a artist and a writer, and I want to talk about this book because I didn't really know you had this book out, and it's been out a little while, and it's called UFO Uninvited Future Observers. And one of the things that what struck me right away is just one of the pages right in the front. It says Area 239. What's Area 239?
I wish I could tell you this. I may have just made it up or something. It's that book at the time. I had just discovered that you could get books printed up at something called maybe it was called Amazon.com, something that I don't know what it was. But, you could just have books printed up, like as many, you didn't have to order 1,000 books. It was print on demand. That's what it was called. And so I thought, well, I'm going to write a UFO book here, and I'll write it from the point of view of a guy who has all the answers. Like I said on the cover, something like, I don't have to prove any of this. Common sense has already done it for me. Like that. That's just like a weird, arrogant thing that somebody with all the answers would think it was a sensible thing to put on a book cover.
I think it's fair though that most people that write books because they do have the answers, or they think they do. And exactly. And although other people may interpret that differently than you or I would, but it certainly goes to show you that. And incidentally, just I was throwing dates out with Alfred Hitchcock earlier. This is the 10th anniversary of this book.
Wow. See,
so where's the tour?
Yeah, no. See, if you had told me this a few weeks ago,
I just knew it together. I just saw it right now.
Yeah. I probably 10 years ago was the last time I read that book too. And I looked around for a copy at my house and couldn't find one because I wanted to review it before I started talking with you so I could make decent comments. But like the very first question you asked me about Area 219,
239,
whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. See, if it ever did mean anything, I don't remember. and chances are it's something I just made up to sound like it was something.
So other than the ease of publishing, what inspired you to write? I mean, what inspired you to write, throw that topic down and fill in the blanks?
I thought this is such a cool opportunity. I can write like a whole series of mysterious thing books.
Right.
Like I was going to do a Bigfoot and Loch Ness monster and UFOs and hidden Middle Earth or whatever, anything. I mean, I could do a book on all of those, any of them, And so I guess UFO was just the first one that came up, and I had fun. I had a lot of fun with it. The cover, I took a picture of the cover at a friend's house that lived right across the street from me. They have a beautiful view from their yard, so I went over there. I had the 2 lids of pots that I got from the Goodwill, and just hooked them together and tied a fishing string, some fishing, what do you call that? Fishing string.
Fishing string? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Fishing
No, I'm
string
sure
works
there's
for
some fishing line.
Right.
Maybe that's what it's. Yeah. Anyway, I had it held up with that on this bamboo pole, and I just hung it up, over the area so that I could take a picture. And I think it looked kind of real, but it was just a fun fake UFO picture. I might have even done the picture.
I think that's been overdone too in the past by whomever, but there are some things out there that we can view that are pretty much mind blowing. But
absolutely. And there's something in my mind. Either I saw an actual UFO or else I dreamt it, and I don't know. Like sometimes dreams are so real that you have trouble sorting it out later. And I feel like I walked out of the house and one of those like huge kind of UFOs that look like it's some kind of like a whole city or something. Like when you look at it close up, like that was just sort of floating over the top of me. And then I think like, it seems so real that I think it happened. And then maybe somehow I had the, forgetfulness ray sprayed on me or something. And so I'm not supposed to remember it. So it's kind of foggy. Either that happened or else I dreamt it and it was so real that now I can't sort it out anymore. So I don't know if I saw one or not, again, like some of the things that I say sound to me like, maybe they think everyone would think I'm nuts or something. But again, back up to the idea that really anything's possible. And when you think of how fast, video games advance and the special effects, they got like, you can go see concerts now of people that are dead because they've got like, images of them somehow. It's just nuts. And that's just in this last few years. And seriously, like I'm thinking, most people had technology for a million years.
Well, and to consider too, you made one good example, and that's video games, but there's a million examples of technology. So literally, you have a million things going on at once, creating these gigantic jumps in technology, and it's hard to calculate that as something real. I mean, when you really think about that, how could that happen?
Yeah,
I have a hard time.
Well, yeah. I mean, like maybe some technology's been leaked from somebody who's visiting Earth from another world, or something. Because I mean, I don't understand technology. Like even simple, let's say like, I don't know how to build a color TV. I don't know how to build a black and white TV. I don't know. I understand that there's these things in the world and stuff, but I wouldn't know if all of a sudden, everyone who knew how to build a TV disappeared. I don't know what I'm even talking about here. But, like say all of a sudden it was up to me. Like, okay, we know there were TVs in the past and we know that people can make them. Now it's up to me to figure out how that's done. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know how to build a TV set, So, and I think the average person is like that. They understand, they accept this technology, but they don't know how it works or anything. And so, stuff is just making giant leaps. And
I think one of the interesting things too that I noted, I'm thinking this must have been about 2000. I hadn't been TV shopping in a while, and I needed to. And I walked into not a Walmart, but a major appliance store that sold flat screen TVs at the time, and I was just mesmerized. I mean, I was looking at it like a $2,500 TV back then, which probably now cost about $198. But I was just mesmerized. I couldn't believe what I had looked at home earlier, and what I was looking at now had happened sometime in my sleep that I didn't even know there was a transition.
Right. And it's the last car we had. We just got some new cars because transmission fell out of our last one that I'm going to tell you about. This fancy car we had. It was a van. We bought it used, and it was so like it had heated everything and fancy this and that. But it also had built into it. It was 10 years old already, and it had built into it like Siri kind of technology or something, where you could just talk to the car and say, where's the nearest fast food restaurant, But here's the thing. Here's the funny part of it. When we bought it, it never worked right, So probably when it was new, it probably did. But whenever we had it, we would say, where's the nearest pizza shop? And it would go, I'm sorry, there are no golf courses in this area. It was just nuts, but it was that's pretty good entertainment.
It's like a bizarro scene from 2001: A Space Odyssey, but on Earth, yeah. The computer's fighting you. I think it's interesting in the book because you throw down some really good quotes in there that at least every page has a good one. I like this one. It says, "Have we become lazy in our thinking that we have totally overlooked the reality of where these observers come from? But not only have we overlooked that, we've overlooked a lot of things. That things have happened while we're sleeping, literally."
Right. That's exactly. That was the beginning of Half Japanese, was that rock and roll had fallen asleep, and we were the ones coming in to fix it while everyone else slept. But that's the other thing, see, now we're the sleepers and other stuff coming in on us that seems unbelievable. There are things back up a minute now. What about the thing, say 20 years ago, somebody invited you to a party. Okay, well, give me a map so I can get there. That's how you did it.
Right.
And then I can remember, all of a sudden, at one point, somebody had the GPS thing in their car, and they were they were telling me, I'm taking it somewhere from. I guess this wasn't an actual conversation, but it was something. This little rant is based on the conversation I'm going to say. See, so basically, if somebody said to me, you still got the technology of having people hand you a map, or you had to get a map from the gas station and figure it out yourself, following the streets and stuff. So you got that technology in your mind. And if somebody told you, well, I've got a machine that can tell you how to get any place, right away, it'll just tell you all the turns you need to make to get to some place. What? No, seriously. All you have to do is type in where you are now and where you want to be, and it'll tell you how to get there. And then I'm thinking I'll invest in that. How much does it cost? $1 million or something? But it's such an amazing concept that a machine all of a sudden knows all the answers, all the directions in the country. No, in the world, So I'm thinking if I had some money, I'd sure invest in that. And then now I'm thinking now everybody pretty much is carrying that around in their pocket. nobody dished out $1 million for it. But all of a sudden, everybody doesn't need to get lost anymore.
That's
pretty big.
That's a huge amount of computing power that we carry. I think one of the original Apollo missions to the moon. I mean, it was like they were carrying an onboard computer, which was like one of our calculators 20 years ago, or not even. So,
yeah. I saw a picture last week. I was just looking at images online, and there was a picture of 3 guys pushing a huge rectangle up a ramp, like into a van into like a big, 16-wheeler truck or something. I may be wrong, but I think that's what it was a picture of. That's my memory. But anyway, then you read underneath, and basically it was some guys in the 60s pushing a 5 megabyte computer.
Oh yeah, I posted that. Yeah, the huge computer.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think like the first Apple computer I bought was 750 megabytes.
Right.
Not even 1 gigabyte. Now, in your pocket you got it. 400 times that or something. It's just nuts how fast and how much smaller things got, and how the technology comes. And sometimes even when you know it's coming, it sneaks up on you.
Right.
Like I remember many years ago, reading the book by Bill Gates, and at the time people had those big video dishes in their yard.
Those are like amazing.
Yeah.
now they're big planters in their yard.
Yeah. In his book, he said, one of these days they'll just be like a foot tall or something, and everyone will have them just on their roof like antennas or something. And I thought, wow, that sounds pretty good, And then he said something about people will have computers that are the size of their wallet, and they just put it in their pocket, and So see, both of those things, it wasn't like one day we didn't have them and the next day we had them. They just sort of, because they weren't calling them pocket computers, they were calling them phones, and the phone, and I didn't have one at first. They were expensive and stuff, but you started knowing people that have them, and then a few years ago I finally got one, and I don't talk to them on the phone very much at all. So to me, it is just a pocket computer, really, and so all of a sudden, that came true, and the same with those antennas. Dishes that all of a sudden, I think first we had something called, I don't even know what it was called, like, I don't know, smart TV. No, it wasn't smart TV. I don't know. It was some kind of thing where we didn't have an option of having cable, but all of a sudden, instead of getting 12 channels, we had a chance to get 49 or something. Right. If we put the dish on our roof. And so, okay, sure, we'll get one of those. And nowadays, and I remember, another thing in this book was like, someday there'll be like hundreds of channels, so that you can, there'll be a channel on how to build a log cabin or something, And I think like now with streaming, basically that's that. I'm sure you can go online and look up how to build a log cabin and watch hundreds of hours of YouTube of people giving advice and stuff. It's just like having a log cabin network, So that's another one that came true, I think.
Well, if you consider our humanity and just consider the last 5,000 years, obviously we had some big technology breakthroughs that we don't even know about or have a feeling that we had, 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. But in the last, 50 years, which is realistically in the history of us is like a millisecond, we've had this quickening, and one of the overlying themes in your book is you talk about these observers from the future. And what about, somebody in our future that's able to provide us with information, that would result in a more productive and a quicker technology in the future. I think you think that's possible, or have thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, right now I think pretty much anything's possible. But I think that's fairly likely. Because like I'm saying, an average person can't build a TV set. Somebody had to figure it out. Well, maybe the way they figured it out is somebody who knew how to do it showed them how to do it or something, and it seems to me, TV, I'm just pulling that out of a hat to talk about something, but, anything, some kind of, hint on how to make things fly or how to do this or that, might have been something that was learned from somebody who has already been doing it for thousands of years. And that makes sense to me. And it does make sense to me that when we're seeing things in the sky. See, at first, like with time machines, I figure at first it'd be all scientists and stuff. And so maybe they know what they're doing and you don't see them in the sky so much. But after they've been around for a few 100 years or 1,000 years, then you got the teenagers out joyriding in the time machines, probably, So maybe they're sloppy at, maybe what we're seeing now, if you see something flash across the sky, it's because some kid's out hot rodding in his parents' time machine or something, and didn't set all the dials correctly. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a scenario that I think about too. And, I've had a couple of guests on the show that actually talk about, obviously we see these aliens and they look, or people are seeing these aliens and they look rather human.
Right.
And it's so unlikely that they could travel for, light centuries realistically and to have to get here. So it would seem that, it's more likely to be from the future. But then, to me, I would like to hear a number, I'd like to hear the probability of that. But of course, that would really be hard to pinpoint that particular equation, because it's, there's some theoretical nature there.
Right. But, it certainly just makes sense to me that there's billions of places that people could come from, in the universe. See, another theory that I had, and I might have even talked about this in that book, I don't know, but I think like the similarities between going from where we are out and getting bigger and bigger, or going inwards and getting smaller and smaller, to me are pretty much the same. Like you got a sun with planets revolving around it, and you got like a nucleus or something. I don't remember the science terms of all this stuff, but with atoms spinning around that or something. So say an atom is a whole planet, and so you have so many planets spinning around a nucleus. See, I'm not a scientist here, so I don't know the names of these things, but I'm saying like, so time would be changed so much by that size too. So if you're shrinking things down that far, so that all of a sudden a nucleus of a thing is a sun, then the thing spinning around it could be planets and there could be people on there and stuff. But I'm not saying. I think the problem here is we don't have equipment that can see that small. We don't have a way of measuring that. So I think to say that's not true is kind of a crazy assumption. At this point, to say it is true is a little crazy too. But I think that could be what it is. So
realistically, we're stuck because obviously we don't. We can see out, we can see away, but we can't see in great detail. We can't see our nearest planet in great detail.
Right.
Out of the solar system, obviously. But then again, to get down to the subatomic particle level or beyond we can't get there either. So we're just here.
We're exactly
thinking about it.
But where are we? Maybe we're the last level I mean, maybe inside us, maybe we're the universe and I mean, so all these cells inside us are little worlds spinning around, and our lifespan of, 80 years or 90 years or whatever it is, would be the same as billions of years to something that tiny. So maybe time and size are related in that way. So we're used to this time and this size, but maybe our sun is just a subatomic thing to some other thing that's so vastly more giant than we can imagine. Because like what's on the other side of the universe or something? I mean, does it have limits? I don't know. Maybe the limit is the skin of the person that we're inside. I know I sound like, and I swear, I don't even do drugs.
No, it's thought provoking, and that's
that's
why on this show we have thinkers. I mean, it's worth thinking about, and it's so worth considering that. That's what put us on the moon. That's what put us out into outer space. Yeah,
but I mean, I just feel like now I sound like I'm in 7th grade and I've just got a hold of a tackle box full of marijuana or something.
Not at all. I mean, that's how this stuff starts. That's how that's how physics started.
Yeah, I think that it's very possible what I just described, that maybe we're inside someone else. Maybe there are billions and billions and billions of people inside us, and when the universe finally dies, it's the actual person's time, and they pass on, and all the stars inside them go dark and everything. So who knows? That seems to me like if you thought of us as being as tiny as something that lives on something that's going around a little tiny nucleus, then how big would the thing we live in be? It's, you can't even begin to imagine it. But that might even be, one of the smaller ones. I mean, maybe we're so microscopic now to something else that's out there that, we're several layers down. I mean, when I see a close-up thing of like some kind of bug or something, you'll see like a picture of a bumblebee that's 500 times enlarged or something, and it's all these tiny little hairs, and the hairs have hairs, and there's so much detail that our eyes don't see, but just because we can't process it doesn't mean it's not there, So.
When you think about it too, I mean, you not only have that, you have size, you have big and little, but you have intra and extra dimensional as a possibility, where there's could be two dimensions as opposed to our the way our Earth exists, and multiple dimensions beyond that. I mean, it's
right,
it's impossible to even grasp those things as a human, especially when we can't experience it, and likewise we can't experience extreme size and extreme smallness either.
Right. Yeah. I should listen to your podcast all the time. See, now I got stuff to think about.
Yeah, that might just make it worse, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'm going to start listening all the time. I like this. Plus, I'm having way more fun talking than I thought I might have. I mean, I didn't know, because I thought I might be on, I might need to be able to explain quotes from my book, which I don't remember or something, and I was a little worried, but instead I'm just having a fun time. Like I feel like, if we went on for 5 or 6 hours more, then,
we'd have some breakthroughs. Great. We'd come up with something. I know that for sure.
Maybe we could solve all this stuff. Yeah, that would be good. No, but, I imagine you must get, are you surprised by theories sometimes that people throw at you, or have you heard it all?
Well, I think one of the most surprising things is that, I've always had these ideas, and I've always had these theories, and I've always had these things that I wanted to explore. And one of the amazing things is how many people that I meet who've planted new seeds in my head. And, not like I'm going to take those things and run and go figure that out. But, it absolutely helps me to understand, those bits and pieces that I'm missing that I've missed and don't understand. It kind of puts the whole picture together, and I think it's amazing to me that, there are people who believe, in just about everything and anything that we talked about and more. But, when you talk to these people, they will throw some things at you and they're so thought provoking and they make you think in a totally different direction. And when that happens, that's when it starts to, it gets a little bit more sensical where you feel like you can go beyond what you've already experienced. So when I say this show is about the people behind the experience, that's what I mean. It's ultimately us, you and people like you and me who are going to have to figure things out, and we have some huge hurdles ahead, that but, sometimes I don't want to think about, but it's necessary for sure.
See, here's like when you say don't want to think about it, but it's necessary. Here's one I'm just thinking of. I saw a picture it was a newspaper clip from an article in Baltimore, and this was like from I don't even know what 1960 or something, before I lived in Maryland. But a woman I worked with at the library remembered this time in Baltimore when this happened. There were 3 guys in Baltimore building a rocket, and they were going to fly it to the moon. And then, like in the article, they're saying like, well, how are you going to get back then? And they're like, we're not worried about that yet. They're not. They chose to not think about that. I mean, to me, that's like a pretty big section of the project that they ought to consider. Unless they're just planning to move there, and that's fine. But it was like 3 guys who were just planning to take a trip to the moon and had given no thought to how they might return from the moon.
There's a lot of videos now. Like if you're in a Netflix and Hulu, you can see a lot of videos about, there's a guy in Nevada who builds his own rocket and he wants to prove that the earth is flat. However, there's other people who are building their own rockets and they want to leave the earth's atmosphere. And one of the things that I find amazing is that people think these guys are crazy and they'll never do it. However, the early space program was just full of these holes and theories that, they just had to jump ahead no matter what, because there was a race and they, we're going to skip that part. We're going to get them up there and, there's probably going to have to be an experiment we run while they're orbiting, the earth. And we can do that then and figure it out. And they did it, So, that to me is, the ultimate courage and wow. Can't even imagine.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's so much that is hard to imagine, but yet there are people who imagine it, and who, and luckily everything would stand still if everybody thought the same way and just stopped there. I guess to break through into new discoveries, people got to wonder about stuff and try out this and that.
Yeah. So I want to ask you one last question, and this actually you asked it in the book, and I just wanted you to clarify it because we got to close here pretty quick because I have to get this online for everybody to listen to. But you wrote in your book, did Robert Johnson sell his soul to the devil or the future? What did that mean?
Wow, it's a pretty good line. I don't know what I meant by that, but I guess. What did it say anything before or after that?
No, but it's a really profound statement. I think that to me,
I guess I'm thinking like I don't really buy into the devil story. Some people do and some people don't. I don't really even believe in such a thing. So to me, it's kind of obvious that he didn't sell his soul to a devil, but on the other hand, it's a pretty interesting story surrounding him and how fast he improved in his musicianship and how far he got in such a short time. So maybe he had a crash course guitar playing how it's taught 1,000 years from now, and in the future they were able to bring him up to speed. Like they gave him a 2-month course that put him way ahead of everybody else on Earth. Because they know more about it because it's the future. Maybe that's what I meant.
But for sure, there's the future. The future holds the key, and I don't know in our future if we're going to be able to figure out what we know or what we have known or what we've learned, or if there are visitors from the future. But unfortunately, our time on Earth is relatively short, and even though technology has made leaps and bounds in such a short time, even our time as an individual is so much shorter.
But even if you could, I could get maybe traveling to the past. I don't know if I get one over the other, but it would be interesting, for instance, to send somebody back and they could get firsthand knowledge. Did OJ do it? I mean, I think he did. So it'd be nice to put someone on the spot there who could come back and prove that. But then what would happen with everything that's happened in between, where people have written books speculating on it? If we knew for a fact that he did do it already, where would all that stuff go? So I guess if you go back and change anything, then it changes everything. And so that's nuts. But if you go in the future, that's where you could learn some technology and stuff. But that's the thing. Suppose a future scientist came back here and either just explained some stuff to some scientists here, or brought a scientist on board the spaceship with them, or the time machine, and took them to the future and let them practice firsthand on the machinery and really get to know the stuff. And then they bring them back, and then they shoot them with a forgetting ray. I don't even know if that's such a thing, but it seems like, again, anything is something if you give them several million years to work it out. So they make him forget that he ever left the planet, and he thinks he just thought it up.
Being a human, I think that I know the answer to the fact that in the future and in 100,000 years, if we have that technology, we have to use it. I mean, it's just because we're human and we have to use it. We're going to use it.
I think people would want to put a final stamp on, yes, OJ did, and I mean, that's just one example, or they could go back and find the Boston River.
Historical tourism. And unfortunately, I think OJ would be a big draw, maybe more than the Lincoln assassination.
Like any of that kind of stuff. And then could you stop the bullet from hitting Lincoln? Or that would just change everything, Maybe there's no way maybe you come back, slide in a different dimension where you can view this one, but you can't really interact with it. Maybe.
Yeah, therein lies the paradox and not the law of nature. So we don't know the law of nature, but a paradox will suffice.
Yeah. And even if we figure out laws, we might figure out ways to break them,
We're going to break the laws for sure.
Yeah.
We're going to break a few laws, even if it's physics.
Yeah. Because exactly, like even physics, maybe it changes over time, I mean, they tell me that magnetic poles are shifting or something, So, like, even something that always was some way could end up in 1,000 years being some totally different way. Physics could change, or what, here's the other question. I mean, I know you want to stop this thing, I guess, but
We got time for one more question.
Yeah. Here's this thing about, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, so that's just a definition then, because does hearing have, I always think it's like it makes a noise. Yeah, that's a stupid question because a noise is vibrations and something falls and it would vibrate. And just because no one was there to hear it doesn't mean that the physics, are any different. Of course it made a noise. But then I think, well, no, maybe making a noise, maybe it's a definition. And to make a noise, it has to be received or something. Maybe that's part of what a noise is. So maybe it's not a stupid question. But
questions in themselves are not stupid. It's just
yeah.
Here's what I want. Let's do this as we close. I'd like at least everybody to know where they can find you online. Any projects you have coming up, and where they can find your artwork. I actually own a piece, so it's well worth having. And let them know all that information, please, if you would.
Yeah, I have no special site at this point. One of these days, I will probably put something together. But right now, I'm just on the Facebook, and it's just under David Fair on the Facebook. I know there's another David Fair that's an underpants model. So be careful. Don't go to the wrong one, because if you look up my name in like an image search, you used to get me, now you get an underpants model.
I'll put links on my profile. They can find you easily.
Yes, I would appreciate if people buy my reasonably priced painting, and I'm making a movie right now, which hopefully will be done in June, and always recording new sounds, and I've always got lots and lots of projects going. But if anyone would want to check out, become my friend on Facebook, I have a lot of friends that I don't know, but I'm happy to make new friends. And people could keep an eye on what I'm up to that way, and it's a good place to purchase my art if anyone's interested in that.
It's a great place, and the book's available on Amazon.com. That's where I got 2 copies. So
yeah, that's right.
Check it out. It's called Uninvited Future Observers, UFO by David Fair. It's available Amazon.com, and to say that I am honored is an understatement. This is a conversation really I've wanted to have for more than 20 years, and I want to thank my special guest for being here. He's a musician, an author, and an amazing artist in every sense of the word, David Fair. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cam. I had so much fun. Thank you so much.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.